Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll try to get this to 45 minutes and make sure we all get out of here with any time for questions at the end as well. So just in terms of today, what we'll cover off, just a little disclaimer at the beginning. Obviously, this is not personal advice in any way, shape or form. If you are considering any form of investment into the NDIS, best to speak with a property consultant and your accountant first, just so we get the right information and advice. So we're licensed within property to give you advice across New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland. We also do have an agreement for the ACT, and I'm currently getting my license for Western Australia. All right, so today what we'll cover off, guys, just very quickly, a little bit about us, True Wealth Property. The SDA/NDIS just explained just very briefly this evening. Some people already know about the NDIS, so I don't want to sort of talk about that for too much this evening. A little bit more about supply and demand within that space, the funding mechanism behind that, and also the size of the actual market. The platform itself, a property listing on the platform that you'll see, one of the opportunities that we do have on the platform currently, and what the, I guess the next steps are, and the application process within Duncans for the actual platform itself. So just to jump into it very quickly, look, True Wealth Property has been around for about 4 years. Prior to that, I worked with another property company for 7 years, and prior to that was 13 years in financial services. So worked with Commonwealth Bank, with ANZ, with Mercer during the GFC, which was pretty fun at the time because there was a lot of crazy changes. But the idea behind True Wealth Property is really about an education process before we actually get into the investment space. So a lot of people on online would attest to the fact that we do take our time with finding a property that suits our clients, and it can take as long as 6 to 8 months before we actually do pull the trigger and make a purchase. So we're always looking for the next best thing that will help our clients get into the market. And one of the things about the Duncans Platform, the Fractional Investing, is I'd probably summarize that as one word, and that's access. So it gives us access to invest into property without taking a mortgage, gives us access to a wide variety of properties, and a few other things. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But the whole sort of concept behind True Wealth Property is we're looking constantly to see where the best opportunities are in the marketplace for our clients. So we do look at, off the plan, dual house and land, completed property, house and land, whatever it might be, NDIS, defence housing. We're constantly searching for the best sort of opportunities in the market there. So in terms of, there's actually going to be a PDF that I'll send around to everybody after this as well. So all of these documents will be there available for us to actually, you can click on these links and you'll be able to see everything that we're running through today as well. So just to explain a little bit more about the SDA and the NDIS, I'll just try and summarize that. This would usually take an hour by itself, but just to run through that very, very quickly with you. We refer to this as participant-led properties. So typically we would be looking for a property and saying, hey, we want to build in a particular location based on what you're looking for as an investor. This is completely different. What we're doing is we're identifying where the participant or the tenant wants to live, or where they do live, and we're building properties in those locations. So the 4 main design categories that we have within disability space would be the fully accessible, high physical support, robust, and then the improved livability. And they all have different ratings, different price schedules with the SDA as well. And they cover a range of different disability categories and subcategories. We use the NDIS demand map for exact guidance on where to invest with our clients into a particular property. So there's a big list of properties available to us, and we cherry pick the best locations based on the research that we're doing to make sure that the demand in the area is high, the supply is low, and obviously the returns that we'll be getting for our investors are as robust as possible there. there's a number of different SDA providers that are supplying tenants to the market. So the SDA provider's role is they are the property manager, and you need to have a special certification, special license to be an SDA provider. So we can't just go to Ray White or LJ Hooker to manage the properties. It has to be with a specific provider. At the moment, we deal with quite a number, and we've got SDA Queensland, we've got SDA Management Australia, we've got SDA Housing Investments, we've got probably another 4 or 5 after that as well, all around the country, giving us access to stock that's available through their providers. So the main thing there to understand is the actual tenants or the participants come through from the SIL provider. They're the care providers, the people that are the nurses and the full-time carers that are looking after these participants, and they're giving us the feedback as to the type of property that needs to be built, what do they require, if we need to put furniture into these properties, what do we need to provide. So they work in conjunction with the land developers, the builders, the SDA management team, and we're True Wealth Property are very, very late in the piece. We don't have any say in the design of the property, the location, but we do cherry pick the ones from the list that they make available to us. Well, this is an ABC video from probably about 2 weeks ago. So I'll just press play on this and hopefully you can all hear this as well.
And moving into a place of your own is a rite of passage for the young, but for those living with a disability, it's often not straightforward. One of the main problems is a shortage of suitable housing. But in Ipswich, one lucky 24-year-old footy fanatic has scored the perfect pad. Thanks to COVID-19, it's all quiet at Ipswich Jets home ground, but league fan Tyson Turner-Thomas is playing the long game.
This is the part of my life, actually. Is it? Well, I've been involved with them a lot. I live now.
Just 2 blocks away, his other happy place is under construction.
You haven't listened to
Turner-Thomas has a form of cerebral palsy, and his new home has been built with his needs in mind.
We're handing out the kitchen area.
There's a kitchen where he can help cook, and there's no corner of the house he can't reach.
Expense then doesn't come into it really. You know, at the end of the day, he's got his own home, his own freedom and privacy. So, you know, the extra dollars is all well worth it.
It's all funded through the NDIS. The 24-year-old will pay a weekly and have long-term security. But best of all, he won't have to bother with taxis to get to the footy.
There'll be electric doors, so I'll be able to open them when I need to without the assistance of it. Hopefully, give me my independence.
Disability advocates say that statewide there's a shortfall of more than 1,700 places in specialist accommodation like this, with 820 people under the age of 65 instead in aged care facilities.
There's also a huge cohort of people that live with their parents, ageing parents, and they've got a need to house their children as well and make sure that they're set up and someone can look after them.
If all goes according to plan, Tyson Turner-Thomas will move into his new digs in less than 3 months. And there are big plans for the housewarming.
I reckon there'll be a lot of parties in here.
Baz Ruddick, ABC News, Ipswich.
So it just highlights just very quickly that house will actually be complete end of this month. So we'll be out on site with SDA Queensland and the guys there, just taking some photos and actually a good story there that we're helping people like Tyson get into a home of their own and out of the system. So moving on from there, just more around the supply and demand, the actual figures that are available and the research that we've done into this. Summer Foundation are one of the main charity organisations that report back to the state and federal governments around the actual on-the-ground numbers to do with disability. And this is the most recent report back in March 2020, so fairly recent. In terms of this, what we're looking at is the actual supply that's come onto market. There was about 1,700 properties that have already been completed, and this is 1,500 or so that were under construction up until March 2020. So in total, we're looking at 3,200 properties that have actually been built in this space since launch in 2016. So less than 800 properties per year have been built over the last 4 years. If we increase that twofold, we still wouldn't hit the number that's required for about 27 years. That's what the numbers work out to be. So there's a huge undersupply of property at the moment. As you can see here, for example, in Queensland, there's 99 properties that are under construction or built at the moment for this last year in this space. New South Wales has had quite a bit, but the program launched there first, followed by Victoria and South Australia. Northern Territory still hasn't launched yet. WA recently launched as well, so they're pretty far behind in terms of getting a bit of momentum in this space. So when we look at this as well, we know the categories, where we need to build, what type of property needs to be built, what the actual requirements are. High physical support has been where the majority of the requirement has been highest. We want to get these people out of hospitals, out of aged care facilities and into their own home, much like Tyrone. So the 1,800 shortfall that's in Queensland at the moment is just in that high physical support space. There's several thousand within the robot category. It's actually one of the highest percentage of the disability sort of spectrum there. Fully accessible and improved livability is minor adjustments to the property. So we know the type of property that needs to be built, where it needs to be built. We know what the supply looks like. So the beginning of this year, 383 properties actually came on the market.
Alex,
Completed.
Where?
Got
True Wealth Property.
sorry guys, I think there's somebody their mutes come off. That's okay. So quarter two, 93 properties, and then quarter three this year's 46 properties that are completing in the NDIS space. So really not a huge spike of property coming to market anytime soon. Nowhere near meeting the demand that's required. And looking forward into next year, very, very little actual property that's due to complete. So they do need a bit of a ramp up in this space to actually meet the current demand. So to talk about the actual demand here and the funding behind this is directly from the Parliament's website. The total expense for the NDIS from the 2018-19 budget to the 22 budget over here is $83.4 billion, which is huge. It sounds like that would be unsustainable given the fact that we're in a recession and COVID-19. But the cost-benefit analysis to the government of shifting people out of hospitals and out of aged care facilities and into their own homes is actually quite substantial for the government. The saving there is very, very high. And as of July 1st this year, the funding for the SDA, the NDIS, actually increased. So a lot of people saw the rents that they were receiving in the SDA space increasing by between $2,000 and $3,000. So that's obviously a testament to the cost benefit to the government there. A lot of the funding was provided by the increased Medicare levy a few years ago, but it's a combination of funding sources, state, federal, all contributing to there, and an amalgamation of the different agreements that we had previously for disability. There were a few other organisations out there, you may have heard, 28,000 people on a wait list to move into NDIS property. That's a very dated figure, 2011. The most recent figure, which was actually March 2018, so again, still a little dated, but that's stated as 50,000 people that are likely eligible for the SDA funding, and that number is continuing to increase over time. So a huge number of people there that we're looking to get into these properties, and bear in mind 3,218 properties so far to date. So there's a big gap there between what we have and what we actually need. When we look for a particular location, first thing I do is jump onto the Department of Social Services own website. There's an NDIS demand map there which tells me, based on this particular postcode, the current budget for the NDIS in this area is $12.1 million to $12.3 million. That's per annum. And more specifically to the shared accommodation, they're spending between $3.57 and $3.58 million. Now what we can also then do is we can look at the forecast and see what that looks like. And 2023, obviously there'll be a bit of an increase here. Between 17.9 and $28 million will be required, with an increase there, obviously in the daily living support there. So that increase is about $15.9 million. So that's jumping significantly. and about $5.3 million in diluting support. So that's as more and more people get their care plans approved for funding within the SDA, which is Specialist Disability Accommodation. So the demand is only growing, which is great for an investor looking for some surety around tenancy. But bear in mind, once a tenant moves into one of these properties, it's not likely that they are going to want to move because the properties are customised to their needs. It's difficult to find another property that is customised to their needs. If it was built, it would be unlikely that that one person would be on the short list to get into that property, because there's still a big wait list. It's about 6,000 plus young people in aged care facilities all around the country that we're trying to move into facilities and properties that would suit their needs. So getting onto the platform now and how that sort of works, Domicom is a listed entity on the Australian Stock Exchange, and their sort of, I guess their main benefit that I see, as I said before, is all about access. So being able to access my super and invest into property today, I need to go and take a loan, or I need to have a very, very, very large deposit or amount in my super to be able to go and do that. Whereas this here allows us to invest a small amount into multiple properties. So that again is access into multiple properties and leveraging our sort of risk, or mitigating that risk across multiple properties rather than just investing all of our money into one property. Also allows people that don't have the borrow money to still invest into residential property. And it also gives you access to property all around the country without needing to really go and inspect it, because you're investing with multiple other investors on that platform. So this is a property that we listed on Duncans Platform. This is what you would see when you go onto the platform yourself to see how it kind of works. Main thing is obviously looking at what the returns are. So this has gone through all of the sort of hoops that we had to jump through to get the numbers onto the platform as high as they are. We have to justify those numbers, and the simple way of us looking at that is the SDA set the price, the rental. We don't negotiate with the tenant to say, look, I want you to pay $600 a week and they offer $500. It's a set amount that the NDIS will pay for each participant or tenant in that property. So we know with certainty what the returns will be. And this is still actually a little bit lower than what it should be, because we were trying to allow for all of the other expenses. So we actually split that up, so it's 14.7 plus 2% for the capital growth. The actual return we're getting was about 16.75%, but I'm taking a little bit of a shade in there just to make it look as conservative as we possibly could. So basically, like a crowdfunding platform, people will put money in, they pledge a certain amount. Once it's funded, that obviously will increase once the target is reached. And this is actually higher than the purchase price. It allows for costs, allows for a little bit of a buffer in there from a cash point of view, so we don't have to go back to the investor and say, hey, we've got council rates that are due, we need to get some money. That provides that buffer for us there. So you're essentially buying units or shares in that trust, in that sub-trust which sits under Domicom. Now, I don't want to talk too much about the technical side of how that works, because you should be talking to a licensed financial advisor and getting the correct information from there, and we provide a little bit more about that not too far away from now. But really what this looks like is I just want to put $40,000 onto this property. I like the returns. I like the type of property that it is. There's a bit more on the actual platform itself. You can download some documents that are attached to this as well, read about the property itself, schedule and finishes, the location. We put a bit of information in there about that, the NDIS demand map. We'll put the figures in there for you as well. And there's a bit more there that I just didn't want to put onto this presentation this evening, because it would just get a bit too technical. This is just more of an overview for you this evening. So once you see something you like, you can put whatever the minimum is. You can put the minimum, you can put as much as you want to onto that property, and you can spread that out amongst multiple properties that would be available. And we will start loading more and more properties onto the platform, because we can pick whatever property we want to put on there ourselves. based on the feedback that we get from the investors that we're talking to, like yourselves. So we do a top 10 every single fortnight of the 10 best NDIS properties around the country. We'll look at a property. This is a live example right now. This is not on the platform. We haven't loaded this onto the platform yet. But if we've got investors that say, hey, this looks like a good opportunity, we'll get that onto the platform once we know that we've got investors that are interested. So this is a dual key, which is really great because we only need to find one participant for this side and one participant for this side. So we don't need to find people that can, live together. They live on separate sides. We know what the purchase price is. We know what the returns are based on getting these two tenants into these properties. They are ridiculously high returns, but again, I must stress that the cost saving to the government here, at least $80,000 per head if we're moving people from an actual nursing home into these properties. So one of the main things there is you are earning a substantial amount of income. We need to sort of look at that in context of the property will cost more than a standard house in the area. There are a lot of modifications to this, so the government needs to offset that with a higher return. So we may be starting off in a position where capital growth may not be so fantastic in the initial few years, but right now, in fairness, there's not really much in the way of capital growth opportunity in the market as there is at the moment anyway. So we look at the location still. What is the location rating? What is the investment locally into this area? And this is the figures that we saw in the NDIS map originally, that 4301 postcode. Those stats were for this location. So we put all of that onto there and we explain what the property looks like. You get all of that information, and then we can add other properties onto the platform as well. If we're looking for high-end apartments in Melbourne, we can put those onto the platform if we know we have investors for that. If we know we have investors for the NDIS, we can put properties onto the platform for that. But we won't go just put properties onto the platform and just hope and wait for people to come along and say, hey, let's invest into this. It's kind of a chicken and the egg sort of scenario. We need to know we've got the investors before Duncans and the financial planning team will actually spend the time putting this onto the platform. So a bit of communication back and forth, and we'll get there in the end. So introducing ascendancy planning. So we've got Paul online this evening. I think you're there, aren't you, Paul? I may have muted you, but yeah.
Yes, I'm here, Alex.
Oh, there we go. I thought I had you on mute, sorry. So basically, Paul's job is to help you set up the facility, help you set up the account. Ascendancy planning and True Wealth Property are just working the same, business model, but totally separate entities. And Paul's job is to help you understand how the process works, run through. You need a self-managed super fund set up. He's the man who can help you with that process. You want to use those funds to invest. If you've got other funds you want to look to put in towards there, he can sort of run you through that whole process and has a bit of information there that he can share with you. So Paul's details, and again, this will be on the PDF that I will send out to everybody after we finish. And you can also email us here. You've got our phone numbers there as well. There is an actual document that Paul can then send to you, sets up the actual account for you on the platform. We'll walk you through that. Now, the good thing about the platform as well, it is essentially just a bank account. So you can transfer money into the platform anytime you want that money back. You transfer it back. I think, Paul, you said before 11 o'clock that day, it's in your account by close of business. After 11, it's the next business day. So Paul
that's right, Alex. Worst case scenario, next business day.
Yeah, perfect. So in terms of the actual process of setting this up, there is a small one-off fee for Paul's time to set up the account, which is obviously identifying your real person under the AML and CT rules. To set up a bank account or any facility like this, you need to have your identification verified. He sets up the account, walks you through the process, and depending on what sort of level of advice you need, whether it's general advice or you want more specific advice, he can provide that too. But I believe the setup fee is $220 is noted on here. So that's that one-off setup fee to get the platform open. You're not restricted to just our properties that are on the platform, but I can guarantee you ours will be the best that will be on the platform because I'm scrutinising those very closely. But the role of Paul and his team will be help you to get that account set up, get the money into there, and then beyond that, we can then look at what properties you want us to load onto the platform. And we'll be obviously having a discussion with everybody about what properties do you want us to source. We'll go and find them, put them onto the platform. We'll also find other great opportunities that we'll put onto there, and we'll be promoting those as well. But anything in the NDIS space, the SDA, if we don't lock it down, and I think there's a few people online that are acutely aware of this because they've bought directly with us, if you don't secure that property very quickly, somebody else will buy it. And with the first home buyer incentives nationally today, a lot of that land that we're finding that's the perfect block, all the first home buyers are jumping on that to try and purchase that as well. So we've got to be very quick with that. So when we find a package, we need to make a decision very quickly. Otherwise, we lose that whole package, which is what happened with that lot 50 that I showed you before that was on the platform. That actually got sold to a direct investor just 2 days ago when we were preparing the actual presentation. So in terms of the next step from there, guys, what I'd like to sort of just run through with you, the process is have a chat to Paul or a team member at True Wealth Property, and hopefully we can help you get into the market either in a direct property or through fractional investing. We'd love to hear from you. So I might open it up to see if anybody's got any questions.